Welcome at today's session is about sustainable surgery. Today we like to talk about the development of a reusable alternative for disposable trend of instruments. In the Netherlands, in Delft, we currently develop a sustainable robotic system. This system is quite special because it's for advanced laparoscopy in less developed settings. And the reason why we do that is that current systems only focus on the top 10% of hospitals that have enough finance to pay for the more expensive systems with disposable instruments, which is not possible on the majority of the hospitals that we actually have on this world. So if you look at the system that we develop, it's basically a standard setup. You have a stand with robotic arms. You can tailor this with the number of arms that you need. Then you have an independent camera system on a separate trolley. And you have a portable master system that is actually foldable into a flight case. If you look at the current systems, actually the Da Vinci system is the standard. And this is a beautiful system, but the problem is that they cost a lot of money. Not only to buy them, to purchase them, but also to maintain them. And the reason for that is related to the type of technology that you find in the instruments. It is actually because of that you don't find this kind of systems in less developed parts of the world. Of course, there are exceptions. What you see here is a very happy surgeon that actually integrated one of these systems somewhere in China or India, and he's happy about the development. But our experience actually is that it doesn't work because you don't have the facilities to clean your system properly. And that, of course, brings new risks. Well, another reason why those systems are not sustainable is the fact that all the disposables related to the systems actually also increase the greenhouse gases. And they also generate a lot of waste. For example, if you compare a standard cholecystectomy that is done with normal laparoscopic instruments with one that is conducted with the robotic systems, the amount of waste goes up towards 46%. Well, it's interesting to look at the development of the Da Vinci systems. Here you see an overall scheme that starts with the development of the SEUS. That system was purchased by Surgical Intuitive, further developed. And in 2016, actually, there was a huge milestone because then the patents were expired. And this was the point, actually, that other developers also stepped into the market. Well, that was done, actually. Surgical Intuitive started the development of the single incision laparoscopy systems, but also the more imaging-guided systems. If you look now at the systems that came up in 2016, then we see actually that there was a focus on soft robotics, on artificial intelligence, but also on the development of tinier, smaller, continuous steering devices. But actually in all those developments you see that none of them actually focused on sustainability. And that's very interesting. And here you see actually a global development chart. All the big players are visualized here. And you see in the first quarter, actually, in the left bottom, that there is no solution for the 80% of the hospitals that don't have the financial means to buy one of those huge, gigantic systems that cost a lot of money. And that's where we in Delft came up with the idea to develop the AdLab system, the system for advanced laparoscopy in low, middle income settings. This is where we like to position our system. Well, the reason why the systems that are currently on the market are not reusable has to do with the driving systems. Here you see an example of a standard instrument that's being used on the XI, the Da Vinci, and you see that it's a cable-driven system. So all the motions on the side of the gearbox are translated towards the distal end, the tip of the instrument that is used to manipulate, to grasp, to cut tissue, are actually, this is done through cables. And the cables cannot be cleaned, they are tensioned, and at some point the tension actually starts to lag, and then your instruments become less reliable. And you have to throw them away, or they are full of dirt, and therefore they can cause contamination. The problem is that although those instruments are not made to be reused, the industry started to create a lot of systems and trays and cleaning devices in order to try to clean them as good as they could. But the problem is that still those instruments are not designed to be cleaned. So basically what you do here is you try to create a solution for a problem that should not exist in the first place. And this, of course, is nice for industry, because you can sell more trays, more system, more cleaning means. But yeah, of course, you understand that for a low middle income setting hospital, that this is not a solution because the costs only increase. Well, we therefore try to develop this new AtLab platform, and we look at two important factors. One is the costs related to purchase the system, but also to maintain it. And secondary, we don't want the system to generate all the waste we were talking about. So it should not increase the waste generated to a standard procedure with 40%. In fact, we want to keep it neutral. So actually, if you position this towards the trend that we currently see in robotic systems, and its trend actually is related that you have to pay more money actually for systems that look better, have more controls, but you don't get more out of it. And when you see this kind of trends and developments, you can actually understand that you need to find a new start of development. And in our case, this start point is related to a new driving technology for the instruments. So this is what we at the moment have and what we foresee that will be a big solution in the current time frame. So what we have here is an instrument platform. It's a non-cable driven technology. So those instruments are fully modular. You can choose either to use them in a handle, but you can also place them directly in a robotic system. And this technology is currently being validated within our research group. So another strong point is that we use off-the-shelf robotic arms that we can tailor and we can modify them in order to work with our instruments. The first step that you need to do then is to characterize the whole system. So we do that on a component level. So here you see, for example, that our student, Storm, looked at all the motions and the degrees of freedoms that are possible within the standard robotic arms. And then he added them to our custom stand in order to define what is needed in order to reach all the points of interest around the patient. So you can combine, let's say, standard components with specially tailored developed stands or support systems in order to make a total solution. Well, the training of the instrument technology on itself is not cable driven, so you can take them fully apart, you can clean them, you can rinse them, and currently actually they are being tested with our colleagues in Kenya, because they like to see whether this is also a solution for their setting, which is quite basic. So they don't have this very advanced cleaning systems, they only have the most simple rinses and brushes that you can think of. And then you can say, if that works, then you have a good basis in order to further implement it in more advanced robotic systems. What is important if you develop a new alternative for something that exists is that the functionality is not lacking. So this kind of instruments still need to work with electrosurgery. So the first test that we did were to show that the functionality is still the same. And you can imagine when you develop something like this, that it becomes also interesting to see whether you can make the instrument smarter and be able to measure all the forces and wear and tear that you find related to the instruments. This is something that is currently also not seen in the state of the art in the Western world, but it doesn't mean that you cannot implement it if you do this based on the right set of requirements in an instrument system or robotic systems that are intended even for less facilitated environments. So sometimes it goes hand in hand. So currently we're working on a gearbox system that allows us to actually let the robotic arms and the system communicate with the instrument itself. This is a challenge because all the components need to be rinsed and cleaned in a very easy and proper way. And if that works, we probably have a nice solution of a versatile robotic system that can, on one hand, be used as very simple handles with instrument shafts in a very rural setting. While on the other hand, when you assemble the right component, you can also facilitate a more complex setting in a slightly modern hospital. And of course, what is very important, that if you have this kind of developments, that you also attract the right teams, but you also have to create the right facilities within the NGOs and GOs, for example, in order to embrace this kind of ideas and thoughts and developments before you can really bring it into a new market. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the session.